Hello everybody, it's Mithril Zenith, and it's been a little while since I've recorded, hasn't it? Oh, it has. Let's check out the Hall of Records. The Death Stalker was apparently the deadliest creature that I, killed at 80 million experience total. Let's get into it. Happy Mordor Monday, everyone. It's been 2 weeks since the last one. And in the last 2 weeks, I've been looking around, doing some fun stuff. I went back to Sorcerer for a bit. 256 right now. Need to get to 313. My goal. But I am 374 Paladin. And look at this guild log. Giant Snake, Kenny Maw, Crystal Spider, Fire Ant, Rod of Darkness, Captive Defense, Crystal Spider, Junart, Timana, Witch, Kenny Maw, Mammon, all that fun stuff. And there's a couple other fun things I've found. I don't think I have any of them equipped right now because I'm on my Sorcerer. But I have a Vorpal Blade. That's been cool, that's been nice. 7 swings and +1 dexterity. Oh, speaking of dexterity, okay, I do. Got drained earlier and I was forgetting if I'd looked at that or not. But yeah, 12 defense, 18 attack, decent weapon. Only 1.5 damage, so it's not the best, but yeah. I have this potion. What's a potion doing? Well, I'll get to that later. I found a magenta sash. I'm not using because I just want to use up this last of the static sashes that I have first. But yeah, it's cast Sphere of Flames, which is not the best fire spell, but it's not a bad one. Lemurian Amulet for electrical resistance. Medallion of Dragons, so has a swap in for fire resistance. If there's anything else. More Mithril Gauntlets I have now, so that's been nice. Yeah, nothing else exciting except for... This is exciting. Potion worth 50 million. I wonder what that is. So here's the thing. I know what this is. This is Dragon's Blood. I searched for so long and got aged so much and drained so much. I'm 56 right now. Just in the quest for a single Dragon's Blood. But I want to ID it, even though it costs so much money, because I want to register it in my guild library. Welcome to Dragon's Blood. Requires 20 base con, which I have, thankfully. Subtracts age, requires no hands to use. Not class restricted, but requires a decently high level. Now, is this in the library? Or do I have to sell it first? Items. Dragon's Blood, okay. Cool. So now I have it recorded. One of these items has been found. Last one being on a Banshee. And I was the first to record the item. So I don't need to sell it. And I won't sell it. I'm gonna use it. Take a close look at my stats. I'm 56. I am now 46. You are now 10 years younger. Oh, yeah, 10 years younger. Isn't that a time to be alive? Wouldn't everyone like to be 10 years younger? Well, if I was 10 years younger, I would be 14 again, and I don't want to be 14 again. You know, people want to be a child again, people want to be in the prime of their life again. No one wants to be back in middle school, junior high, whatever. No one wants to be that young again. Or if they do, they only want to because it's like, oh, well, I'd just, not make all the mistakes I'd make and then, take advantage of the knowledge that I have now to not be such an awkward person then, but... Yeah, it doesn't exactly work like that. And yeah, everything is fine. So I hope everyone's been doing well, everyone who's watching around. I've been a bit overwhelmed in my own life, to be honest. Start of a semester is always a interesting time, and start of fall semester is also interesting because, well, when you work in IT, you start getting all the people calling in, I can't connect to the Wi-Fi, I don't know how to get, all these things, and it's like, oh, yeah, there's a lot of simple answers out there, but, people want to just get told the answers, not have to look for them themselves, so that's what I've been dealing with. And between that and trying to get a hold of classes and get all the books I need and everything, it's been quite a time in my life, if I must say so myself. But it's good to be back, recording some more Mordor. It's great to just be able to sit down, relax for a bit, and talk. Everyone needs to talk a little bit on their trips of self-discovery. It's always a good thing to be able to just kind of hear yourself, explain your thoughts to yourself out loud, because sometimes that'll help you realize just how ridiculous they are. It's interesting. So much to think about and so much to do, yet still in the end we're all, all just a little bit not quite there. So I think it's a good opportunity to just kind of, yes, relax, but also just come to terms with who you are, your thought process and everything, all that, and just be able to investigate and interrogate that little part of you that says, those weird things, and be like, is this actually who I am? Is this actually how I feel? And oftentimes the answer might be no. You might get that answer back as a no. And sometimes, you'll think about it and then you'll change your mind and be like, okay, maybe I do think that way, and then be transformative, and that transformative power can be dangerous. You're thinking about your life, thinking about your past, your history, whatever, and just being like, everything sucks. Yeah, you don't want it to suck. You don't want life to suck, but sometimes it feels like it does, and so just kind of have to go through the motions sometimes. But eventually you'll find what you were thinking about or how you were feeling, and you'll just be like, that was kind of, not necessarily ridiculous. It's like, you might still empathize with it or understand that feeling. You'll be able to understand it from a place of, it's not actually that true. Or even if it is true, even if it is mostly true, you're still able to say, hey, it doesn't need to be something that I get hung up over. It doesn't need to be something that I prioritize so much in my life, I can just be happy. And I can just prioritize being happy. And kind of take a step back from whatever's stressing me out or whatever thoughts I have going on in my head that are negative or spiteful toward myself or others, and just kind of be okay, It's my life, I can live it, and I can be okay. And I guess that's kind of the thought process that I've been trying to work on developing as of late. Things may go wrong, things might not always pan out, but things are okay, and I'm okay. And everything's gonna be okay. For my pillar of fire is not killing these black wolves very effectively. Interesting. Teleported me over here, but hadn't respawned yet. I'm not gonna open a slime trap. No thanks. Let's just get on back here. What's been happening in life recently? D&D stuff's been happening. Campaign I'm a player in has been moving around a bit. And the campaign that I'm DMing has been interesting and fun, to say the least. It's kind of sad, you know, knowing that this is going to be the last time I'm with this group of players that I'm with in this, you know, these situations with these particular characters. Yeah, it's kind of bittersweet, you know? Because I love it, and I wish it could go on forever, but at the same time, you know, it can't really go on forever, and I don't really want to, you know, just be stuck doing the exact same things. I want to come up with tell different stories, explore different parts of the world, all that type of stuff, and you can't really do that so much when you're just with the same group so long. And there's a certain aspect to it that once you've been with a group so long, it's like you feel like nothing you can do can really like give them a challenge unless you give them something that like is entirely like risking and being impossible, being way too dangerous. Because like we're playing 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and my players are level 15. No, 17. They just hit 17 at the end of last session. Yeah, it started this whole arc at 15. They just hit 17 last session. And a level 17 player is a dangerous thing. Especially when they have magic items to back up their strength. 17 players, you can't necessarily just send level 17, CR 17 challenges at them and expect to have them be actually challenging, because players will just come back with like, oh yeah, I resist this, and I have, you know, this spell or spell-like ability, or I have this or that, and then it's just like, well, congratulations, that thing that you would have been terrified about earlier, now, you just kind of killed in 2 rounds. And it's not like I expected them to have a hard time. I expected it not to necessarily be too much of a challenge, but I expected it to be at least a little bit potentially dangerous. But I've just equipped them with such things and in so many ways that my players just have way too much at their disposal, I feel like. Which is why it's like a lot of the standard things in D&D, I'm discovering that my players kind of just don't work anymore. Like, the way a lot of monsters, for instance, are built in D&D is that they're fairly inaccurate, relatively speaking. They have decent accuracies, like +7, +8. Higher end, I think, can be like +9 or 10. Oh, thank goodness, slime didn't kill anything. Yeah, I think like unless you're talking like 20+ monsters, generally speaking, things will cap out around 10 or so. +10s. Meanwhile, my players have, let's see, one of them is 26 armor class, and his whole strategy has been run to the center of every pack, attract all their attention, and then so naturally they're all going to attack him because he's, you know, the one that they're flanking and everything, and he just has so much armor class that they can't hit him except for on a natural 19 or 20. The advantage system, if you want to play with flanking, does alleviate matters because, I mean, he was fighting enemies that had a +7 to hit. And he has 26 armor class, which means that they will hit him on a 19 or a 20, and that's it. And the advantage system says that they get to roll 2 dice instead of 1, So the actual hit rate is somewhere closer to like 19 to 20%. Between like 18 and 20%, I think, is what we roughly estimated the actual hit chance to be, instead of 10%. So that's pretty good. But at the same time, that's assuming a flank, and that's assuming, you know, multiple attacks. Which multiple attacks, I think, is the way that monsters in like the monster manual and whatnot get away with being. Oh, she's immune to fire. Interesting. I think multiple attacks are the way that monsters in the monster manual get away with being this, like, higher CR than they sometimes seem. Because it's like, okay, they have a potential to hit multiple attacks, even if each attack is fairly weak, compared to what the players have, which, yeah, melee attacks are not necessarily the strongest thing, but they're getting pluses as much better than their actual attacks. And the rogue, once you get a high enough level, pure class rogue, well, I'm not saying the game's over, but I'm saying that they can one-shot many things. Without critting, they can do well over 50 damage in a single attack, provided they can just trigger a sneak attack, which in 5th edition is stupidly easy to do, because all you need is an enemy of the foe that you're attacking to be within 5 feet of them. Even if you're not ruling advantage in terms of, like, flanking, because that's technically a house rule. Even if you're not using that... I'm not fighting... Oh wait, never mind, I am fighting them. Even if you're not house ruling in, you know, things that are really common, like flanking, back attack, whatever, a rogue can still just get their sneak attack so easily. The only downside is they can't really get that if they're alone. So alone, you have a fun time negotiating, okay, how can this rogue get a sneak attack? They're going to have to figure out how to get advantage, which means they're going to have to set up the situation accordingly. But in a party situation, the rogue is just like, cool, I got this. Just attack someone that's already being attacked by someone else, and then just deal like 60 damage to them. And then it's like, well, sure, they only get one attack per round, but they can easily manipulate the situation to get themselves advantage, to get themselves, you know, other things, other types of bonuses, whatever. And it just becomes, well, it's a matter of how do you get the rogue to not do 60 plus damage? You can't. They're going to be hitting that hard. You just have to have stuff that can potentially survive it. Or if it can't, you have to have enough things to just throw at them. So I did the Zbrat Horde. I put my rogue and my paladin, who were separated from the rest of the party, and they were in a maze, which basically asked them... One sec, I want to open that box. They were in a maze, which basically asked them to explore it, kind of get lost in it, take a route that takes a lot of time, and then once you get to the end of the maze, you have to work your way back. Well, if you want the thing at the end of the maze that you want, which is the whole reason you went to the maze, when you take it, unleashes a Zbrat Horde that fills the maze, and I've custom ruled these monsters. Like, this was like an odd stroke of genius. I was talking with someone else, actually, because I was like, you know, I kind of want to make the swarming monster, but I don't like the swarming rules. I don't think the swarming rules really fit how dangerous this monster can be. Because, like, if you're watching Mordor, you've seen... if you're watching it, or if you've played it, you've seen that at least, you know, before I was level, 200 plus, the Zbrats on floor 6? Floor 7? Wherever they spawn? Floor 6, I think? Absolutely terrifying. They are truly frightening. Is this stone the thing I want? No, it's just Scarab of defense. I'm still missing my Scarab of protection. I miss it so much. So Zbrats are terrifying, And they're terrifying because as soon as you see them, they can do so much damage. And so I was talking with someone, I'm like, I want this weak swarming monster that's easy to kill, but comes in huge packs and they all deal crazy damage. And so I'm like, well, I don't really know exactly how to do that, because the swarm rules, which seem like the logical choice... I'm just going to go for another run. Did I deposit in bank? Yes, I did. Cool. Yeah, the swarm rules, which seem like the optimal choice, just don't really have that same type of feel to them, because it's like, okay, they resist... You get a big pack that resists regular damage, so bludgeoning, piercing, slashing, from any source. But the swarm rules as well don't really have that same sort of feel of like, oh, what if you hit them with an area of effect spell? They don't take extra damage for how many squares they cover, they just kind of take the exact same damage as any other creature would. Okay, how are their attacks treated when they're swarming? Well, they get one attack. One? Yeah, just one. Okay, so does it, like, get bonuses based on how many are in the swarm? No, not to hit. They'll get a slight bonus to damage. Like, they'll double the damage if they have full hit points, and then they'll deal full damage with their full hit points, and half damage if they're half hit points, but that's the only delineation you have available to the freaking swarm rules. And I hate it. I came up with a custom swarm monster of rot grubs, because, again, I'm real creative, guys, and I love Mordor, and this is kind of what I do. And so I came up with, okay, what am I going to do? Let's say that they have, instead of making their damage go up, based on how many there are, I'm going to say they get more attacks, based on how many there are. The attacks are still at the same plus modifiers. That's another thing I could have changed. But I'm going to say that they get more attacks the more that I have. So it's like, full group, and we have 4 attacks. And then every roughly quarter of hit points that get shaved off, they'll lose an attack. So, like... And this is a size huge swarm, by the way. So it's like, almost like 200 hit points here. It's like every 40 or 45 or 50 or however many hit points they lose, they'll lose one of their attacks. So they start out with 4, and the 4 attacks are like, plus 7 or something. But at the same time, it's like, okay, so they're swarming, but they don't get advantage? Well, no, because advantage isn't a standard rule set. Advantage for flanking, at least. And so, yeah, so you have a swarm that is surrounding someone, and they have to, basically surround them, occupy their square in order to attack them. They have a 0-foot reach on their attacks, but because of the swarm mechanics, they don't get advantage on their attacks, even though other things that are doing the same thing would get advantage. So that's an interesting thing. Like, you could house rule it. You could say that swarms always get flanking advantage, and that swarms can never be flanked. You could house rule that. Easy, sure. But you still get the same sort of problem where it's like, okay, well, now that you have this swarm, it's like, okay, you have to house rule it that it gets advantage when they're engulfing, but then it's like, you've successfully made swarms so they always attack with advantage, which is not necessarily what you want. What the freak? Vampire Fang destroyed, eh? Did I pick up any... No, I picked up nothing. Well, this is gonna be fun. Let's just blast our way out of this one. I could just be using Pillar of Fire on the... Oh wait, I can't attack! Shoot, I can't just attack normal damage. Slime traps, not even once. Not even when it's a freaking incubi and you think it could hold a... You think it could be holding dragon's blood. Not even once. Incubi, Harpy, Shadow... Whatever it was. Whatever it was. Not even once. Not even then. Because, yeah, now I'm using no weapon and can't get there. Anyway, swarms. So swarms could be... if you give swarms advantage because you're ruling they're surrounding someone, like, that makes sense if you're using, you know, the flanking rules. And then you've also set up a situation where, okay, the swarm will never not have advantage. The swarm will always attack with advantage no matter what. And sure, you could give that as a strength of the swarm. They always have advantage, they never have penalty. Like, swarms are weird, because the game handles swarms as if they're just single creatures. According to the rules, they just have a couple special rules with them. And so, yeah, I made a rock grub swarm, and I'm, you know, decently okay with how it turned out, but it's not, you know, didn't really love it. And so I was decided with the Zbrats, I'm like, no, these things need to be terrifying. These things need to be absolutely horrifying. Just channel my fear when I first found them and instantly died. I'm like, these things need to have some high damage to them. And so what did I do? Well, I talked with a friend, asked him out, you know, was generally open sourcing this, asking about how we could potentially get this figured out, get this situated. And we came to a conclusion. It was really just kind of their suggestion idea. But I liked it. Oh, come on. Their idea was to just make them all individual, small, like, tiny creatures. Tiny creatures. Individual creatures who have basically no power by themselves. I gave them literally, like, however d4 minus 4 because of, like, negative con penalties situation type thing. I'm going back out. That was not a good run. And so I was like, okay, I'll give them, like, 4d4 minus 4 hit points. Sure. Averaged out to, like, 8. 8 hit points each. Size tiny, not a big deal, right? Individually, no, they're not gonna be that bad at all. But give them a high dexterity. Give them an attack that's based on dexterity. And then give them levels in Rogue. And give them the pack tactics buff that certain animals like wolves have, which give them bonuses, which give them advantage if they're attacking next to someone else. Cool, so now I have these swarming type things that are a little dodgy, but don't necessarily, can't take a hit, so if you miss, you know, you might miss them in melee, but if you hit them, you're basically gonna kill them. Unless you roll, like, really low, or weak yourself. And then, when they're together, they have pack tactics, so they have pack tactics, so they get advantage. And so what he said is just give them levels in Rogue, so I did, you know, one better, and I'm just like, well, what's the Rogue feature that is dangerous? Sneak attack. Give them sneak attack. Doesn't have to be a strong sneak attack. It's like, okay, you know, sneak attack equivalent of like a 3rd or 4th level Rogue, you know, plus 2d6 sneak attack, which is a fair bit of damage for a low level character, but for a high level character with 200 hit points, you know, extra 2d6, it's nothing. But the thing is, I gave them another attribute, which is something that I customly made, called swarming. Did I call it swarming? Did I call it something else? I think I just called it swarming. I forget what I called it. Basically what it is, and feel free to steal this, if you care. I figured out, okay, what is the idea of the swarm? That's multiple things occupying the same space. Okay, so how can I do that? I mean, technically you can have, like, 2 creatures occupy the same space. They're just at disadvantage to attack, and, you know, attacks against them have advantage because they don't have anywhere to move, you know, stuff like that. So what if I said, well, multiple creatures can occupy the same space without penalties? Like, there's not a strict penalty stating that they can't. And in order to facilitate this, what if there's, like, cramped, narrow corridors, and I give them spider climb? Now we're getting somewhere. So now not only can you have, like, 3 on the ground attack you, but then you can have, like, you know, 2 at the walls and, like, 2 at the ceiling. And it just being like, okay, so now you have just a horde of things just that all get advantage from each other because pack tactics, that all deal not necessarily huge damage by themselves, but it's still a decent amount. And because they have advantage, they're more likely to crit, and it means their damage dice gets doubled, and that is actually pretty significant damage when you change, you know, d6 plus 3 to 3d6 plus 3, which turns then into 6d6 plus 3 on a crit. So you're going from, you know, doing, you know, between 4 and 9 damage on a hit to 6 and 21 damage on a hit to potentially 9 to 39 damage on a crit. Yes. But of course, what then happens is you also get the effect of, well, if there's an area of effect attack, it hits gosh dang every one of them. And so I forgot that my Ranger Paladin had a Helm of Brilliance with like 15 charges of Fireball left. And so a single Fireball in the right hallway of the maze blew up 30 of them in a single attack. Because they don't have any sort of way to resist area of effect damage, which is one thing that I both like and hate about swarms. In terms of, I feel like if there's a giant swarm of small things, an attack that is meant to kill a lot of small things should kill the swarm. Other people may disagree, but I think that it should. So for instance, at the very least, I would be willing to house rule. Like, I would be willing to make swarms stronger. Like, I'd say, sure, give them advantage on every attack they make because they're surrounding them, because you're giving them flanking. But also make them take the area of effect damage for every square that's affected by the area of effect that they have. If you're going by 5-foot squares, if it's a large swarm, they'll take 4 times the damage. If it's a huge swarm, they'll take 9 times the damage. You know, that type of thing. And I say that because I think it's fair and I think it's realistic. Or rather, more realistic than not having anything. And just treating a swarm as if it were just a normal monster. Like, I saw somewhere, while I was looking for swarm rules and for adjustments to, like, make higher level swarms and whatnot, just like, oh yeah, just, you know, hill giant, take a hill giant and say, oh, it's a swarm of bullywugs to add flavor, but it still has the same stats as the hill giant, it just has these different, like, you know, the swarm tag. And it's like, that doesn't sit right with me. Because it just doesn't feel like a swarm, it feels like an individual thing that doesn't necessarily have to... Like, it feels like a thing that shouldn't be locked to a specific square, being locked to a specific square, for instance. So I really don't like that. Like I said, the Rot Grub Swarm that I made, I'm not actually very happy with. Because when my players see it, and they just walk around it, they just leave. And this thing, you know, can't split its attention. It can only do one thing at a time. Whereas a real swarm, if you think about it, would be massive, would be filling these areas. Dragon dropped a potion. Dragon dropped a potion there. Well, let's poke our head down here before we go back up. Maybe we'll get lucky and find something else. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of room to make swarms cool and make swarms interesting that just was never done. And so I've heard people like, oh, I do army battles by just having swarms of humans, and it's like, that doesn't really work. The swarm rules are not made for that. The swarm rules are hardly even made well. There are better rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide for alternate options for large-scale combat. If you need to know if you need to be able to randomly determine the outcome, or fairly determine the outcome, but like you don't want to run a manual combat. There are fair rules for that. There are fair rules for saying, you know, if you have X attackers at Y bonus to hit, then Z of them, or Z of them, if you're Canadian or whatever, will hit. And I think that that's a much better way to rule in general, unless you want to actually manually keep track of all the creatures, because keeping track of all the creatures, I thought I cast the spell, I wasn't fast enough. Shadow of Death, I'm not messing around with. Those things can age me like 3 to 5 years if they touch me. Yeah, let's get out of here. I'm low on spell points now. And so, you know, I don't like the swarm rules, but I created these individual things, and it worked brilliantly, and on both the good and the bad. Because like I said, they were dangerous, they were able to stack up and attack, you know, all at the same time, getting multiple attacks based on how many there were. And each one actually got a swing, actually was able to attack. I have not used my Crest of the Sorcerer, I should change that. But there were also downsides, like, you know, I had to rule, like, only so many of them could actually fit into a square at once. I had to rule that, you know, when an attack came by that hit all of them, it actually hit all of them. So I was like, okay, you just killed 30 things with a single fireball, and you've cleared out everything that's in front of you. Which, to be fair, is what they should have done, and that's how swarms should work. It's, if you have Area of Effect, you should be able to kill an entire swarm with Area of Effect. That's the whole point of AoE damage. And so the fact that, you know, sure, it sucks to, you know, have an entire swarm of things all die to a fireball, but that makes sense, that's realistic, that feels right. Instead of being like, oh, you throw a fireball at this giant swarm of bugs, and you've killed many of them, but there are still more bugs that don't seem harmed by the fireball. What? You see, that still doesn't really work. At least not for me, at any rate. That doesn't really work for me. Would I successfully pick a trap for once in my life? Gilthriel, can you pick a trap one time in your life? Apparently not. Also, now I'm out of Crest of whatever. These things are dangerous because they have acid spray, and I lost my acid resistance. Yeah, so that's how I feel about swarms. That's how I handled the Zbrat horde. As in, I'm not going to make it a swarm. I know that everyone's going to say, swarm. But also another thing that I wanted them to spread out and fill the maze, and then get attracted by the sound of combat. They couldn't do that if they were a swarm. In fact, I'd have to like stretch them all out in order to even make them fit, because the swarm takes up X spaces, even though they can, you know, technically squeeze into spaces by the size of whatever creature. So if I had a size gigantic swarm, I would always have to be splitting them across 16 different squares, even if that didn't necessarily make sense. And so instead, like, I soft capped how many could, you know, effectively be in and fight in a single square at once, because, I mean, rules as written, there is no cap, but I house ruled a cap saying, like, okay, you know, their size tiny, they can fit but then it's like let's say it's like 3, 2, 2, and 2, so like 9. So like, okay, 9 per square seems reasonable, and that seems like the amount that can actually attack you effectively. And so that's what I did, and like I said, it worked out brilliantly. They all got attacks in. They were dangerous. They were very powerful attacks. But as soon as a strong area of effect thing came in to clear them out, it cleared out all of them. And I loved the way that worked. And, you know, it was kind of like, you had Fireball, dang it. But at the same time, it's like, hey, you had Fireball, and you actually had to use it. That's a better way of looking at it. It's not saying, dang it, the players had a solution. It's called, I made the players use the thing that was their solution that they haven't been using before. And I think that's a much better way to look at it as a DM, and a much more effective and enjoyable way to look at it, just in a gaming sense in particular, because like, my goal as a DM is not inherently to kill my players. My goal as a DM is to give them fun and interesting and unique challenges. And the Swarm rules as written do not necessarily provide unique challenges. They provide a reskin of existing challenges. Whereas my individual monsters, even though on the surface seems like, oh, I'm not doing anything unique, I'm not using these special Swarm rules, created a much more unique and interesting encounter than had I just made a swarm of Zbrats. And I'm much more happy with it. Yeah, that's how things turned out in that D&D campaign. I think it's still not over yet. They still have like 2 keys to find and 1 key to assemble, but you know, they're getting close. They could theoretically do all that in a single session, although knowing this group, I think it's going to take them 2. And I think I'm definitely going to continue enjoying this. I thought that I was going to get a chance to talk about the campaign I was planning in the future, because I finally had a breakthrough in that. But it looks like I've already been going for over 40 minutes, so let's just sell the stuff to the store and go from there. Plus my voice is hurting. I have... gosh dang it, this was the potion he dropped, right? Yep. Elven freaking wine. Makes me sad. But yeah, have that D&D campaign where I'm a player in coming up just tonight. So that's going to be fun. I have other homework to do that's going to be less fun. Write some, 1 or 2 page responses to readings and whatnot, and read some other things. But yeah, a lot of stuff to do, but I'm glad I was able to at least get this video out. It's been too long since I've played Mordor on video and been able to talk about it. I think off screen I'm gonna try and finish up my sorcerer grinding, and then from there I think it's honestly just gonna be paladin straight out from here. I don't think there's really much purpose in leveling mage that much more, unless I want to hit minimum casting cost for soul entrapment or field of death, but that's like 400 plus, and I don't really want to do that. And plus, apparently the way that spellcasting works, it's always based off of your current guild level and not the guild level in the guild that actually knows the spell. So you can level those guilds for minimum cost and then just throw into a easier to level class, like a warrior class, that you get more out of for leveling. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna hit 313 for sorcerer. I don't believe I'll ever go back for... Oh, and I got like 10 levels in seeker to increase my perception. Don't think I'll ever really go back to mage or wizard. Scavenger's a potential. If I get really bored with paladin, I might level scavenger just to increase my odds of opening traps, but I'm going to require hundreds of levels before that's really noticeable. Wizard, if I really, really, really want Word of Death, I'll go back to wizard. Mage, if I really want soul entrapment or field of death, I'll go mage, but I think aside from that I'm fine. And there's no real reason to level Nomad anymore, because I have... I'm approaching max AD as Paladin, which exceeds Nomad, and I already have high enough levels to use all the equipment I want. And the Seeker, I only got 10 levels in to boost my Perception, because my Perception score was 44 from Nomad, and now it's 60 from Seeker in just 10 levels. That helps a lot. That's a pretty big boost. But anyway, that's enough chat. I better get going. It's been 45 minutes. Thanks for watching. It's Mithril Zenith, signing out. See you next time.